Erev Tov, everyone. It is Tuesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States. Here in the diaspora, this is the Maimon Beit Knesset. Therefore, it must be the Rabbis Discuss, whatever it is we're going to discuss. Let me, I forgot to put Rabbi Ancel's photo up there, so let me get that set where it's supposed to be. And then we will, there we go. Now we can bring Rabbi Ancel in. Good evening.
Good evening. Shalom, everybody. I hope everybody's well. Should be an interesting evening.
Yes, it should. I mean, we're going to talk about, I'm sure that most people are kind of acquainted with it, but I don't think they actually know the details of the Maser. And that's what we're going to be discussing tonight, friends. So hang on. Let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald, we have Marshall, we have Richard, and we have a few people watching in the background, and more to come. More to come. So, okay. So, shall we dive right into it? We got plenty to actually get into tonight. So, and this
before we get into it,
yeah.
Let me give you let me give the guys a small introduction. But what is tzedakah? The meaning of tzedakah is it's called a charitable contribution, but the term originated in another realm. Where? It was in the Bible. Tzedakah means a righteous behavior, and often it is paired with justice. In Jewish thought and tradition, material support for those in need is not a matter of charity. The term implies it's a requirement. And the Rosh Hashanah prayer lists tzedakah alongside repentance. And the prayer, as a human, is capable of averting a negative divine decree. So, says that if you give tzedakah, God will forgive you. So now we can get into the losses, offset gains, and computed maser. It is one of the toughest things to do. We'll go through with what Aryel has, and then I'll go in the actual computation, but this may take a couple of lessons.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started in this, and I think as we go into this, it'll get a little clearer as to what Maser is actually, what we're actually talking about. Soshi has joined us. Good to see you, Shoshi. She made it back in time. Good to see. Okay, so let's get to the question that was asked to the din. The question is, I own a taxi company, but besides that, I sometimes make investments. Very good. Each month, I check my earnings from my cab company, and give tzedakah accordingly. Recently, I took a big loss on one of my investments. The question is, may I reduce my income by the amount of the loss and just give maser on the remaining gain, or must I give maser from my income and ignore the loss? So, okay.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. So let's get into this. So the Din answers back on this. Your question is important because the poskim write that one should try to determine the exact amount that he should give as maser, because there is something special about giving a tenth or 2/10. See, for example, Ahavas Hesed 19 in the footnote. Recall that giving a tenth prevents one from becoming poor. If only that were true. Anyway, thus, even if one gives more than a tenth, he should try to determine how much he should give. It goes on. The difficulty that the poskim have with issues concerning maser from one's income, maser kesofim, is that there is almost no discussion in the Gemara about the entire subject. Therefore, if the poskim were forced to find comparisons in other areas of halakha concerning the question, the poskim found two areas in halakha to which they compared maser, kisofim, and the following, and we follow both approaches. Okay, one approach wasn't good enough, so we have to continue on. Here, scroll that up for you, Ancel, so you can see it. Okay, some of the poskim, Sha'arei Ephraim 84, some Sofer note, found an analogy in the laws of investments, since the issue of losses offsetting gains is discussed in this context. The issue is where A invests money with B and makes an agreement with A that will get a certain percentage of the gains, but suffer a different percentage of the losses. If B makes two investments with A's money, and one profited and one lost money, the issue of losses offsetting gains comes up. So you can see where this is getting difficult already. If losses offset gains and there is a net gain, then A will just get his percentage of the net gain, and his percentage of the losses are irrelevant. Hence why when you invest in several different ways, so that one balances between conservative investing and a little riskier investing and stuff like that, so one will balance off against the other. However, if they do not offset gains, one must compute each investment separately using different percentages, and A will receive the percentage of his gain minus his percentage of the losses. Hope you're following on this. You may want to take notes on this one. Okay, so the halakha is that if one investment one investment agreement covers both investments, the losses are offset. The losses offset gains. But if each investment is covered by a separate agreement, then even if the two agreements are the same, one must compute each investment separately. Scroll that up for you. These poskim rule that this principle should decide the issue when dealing with maaser as well. The difficulty is we don't write agreements with Hashem concerning our investments. The poskim rule that computation defines the investments. When one makes a computation of his gains and losses for a certain period of time and determines how much money he must give as maaser, he concludes one period and everything afterwards is computed separately. Therefore, you need a scorecard for this one. Therefore, within one computation period, losses offset gains, whereas in two periods, they do not. Okay, and we are right here. The second approach found a different source for determining how to decide the issue in the case of Maaser Kesafim. These poskim, the Noda Bin Yehuda and Knesset
Hagedolo.
Compared
Maaser on one's income to Maaser that one must give on the produce of his field. Concerning the latter, the pasuk says that one may not tie the crop of 1 year together with the crop of another year. So what they're saying that you should keep them separately.
Yeah.
Thus, for example, if one has 5 fields where he grows wheat, he can gather all the wheat together and separate a tenth from the entire crop. The fact that the wheat grew in 5 different fields is irrelevant. However, one may not gather together the crop of 2 years, even from the same field, and tie both of them together because each year is considered a separate unit. This is a common issue with quince because the new year for fruit begins Tu B'Shvat, and this fruit begins growing right around Tu B'Shvat. Farmer must be careful to tie the quince that began growing before Tu B'Shvat separately and from those that begin growing after Tu B'Shvat. That's even more confusing.
Yeah.
So if I own 5 fields, I can gather them together and figure out what the maaser is, but it's in the same year. But if I have 2 fields, but each one is in a different year, I cannot gather them because they have to be calculated separately.
Yeah, so I think the issue here and what they're talking about, and they're talking about the year, and I think they're talking about the year that we typically count starting at Rosh Hashanah.
Correct.
So that year, there's actually basically 2 crop years in what the calendar year would be 2 crops as opposed to the Jewish year.
Right.
So
in the calendar year, it would be 2 crops.
Yeah. So if the crops start growing during the Omer, then you would have the previous year's crop from. Let me try. I'm going to try and sort this out in my own head too. So the crop from the previous year, which would have been from the time of Rosh Hashanah, the previous year, the previous calendar year, Rosh Hashanah,
Yes.
Until Rosh Hashanah. So we would have the crop that comes in at the time of Shavuot, not Shavuot. Sukkot. Wait. Okay, so we would have the crop that comes in at Sukkot and the crop that begins after winter when we start counting the Omer and till Rosh Hashanah. Okay, have I got that?
Yes.
Okay. Like I said, you're going to need a scorecard for this one. So that's what we're talking. I think that's what they're talking about here, as far as the year, about 2 crop years and so on and so forth. So if you were doing it by the calendar year, say 2021, and your crop, like we typically would do, we would figure the crop year as that year from spring until late fall. But in the Jewish calendar, that would actually be 2 separate years.
Yeah, well, that's what it says. And each Jewish year is considered a separate unit.
Yeah.
Auerbach writes that it is not crucial when one makes his calculation, but it would be at least, you have to do at least once a year and should be fixed.
Okay, I think you skipped something here.
And not done haphazardly.
Ancel, I think you skipped a bunch.
Where?
I think we were here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Since there's no proof that either opinion is incorrect, and it is possible to satisfy both opinions, we act in a manner that is in accordance with both opinions. Thus, one should compute his gains and losses at least once a year and determine his net profits for the entire period and figure out 1/10 and write down that is the amount that he must give as maaser for that period. If he gives 1/5, then he should compute 1/10 and give twice 1/10. Okay. Where he makes the point that one should separate a tenth 2 times and not lump the 2 tenths together as 1/5.
Okay.
So, if one makes his computation for less than an entire year, then one may only, may only use losses to offset gains within that computation period, even though the losses and gains took place in the same year, because we act in accordance with the opinion that rule that determining feature is just computation period and not the entire year. The Chavos Yair writes that one should make his computation before Rosh Hashanah, since the Gemara writes that. Where am I?
Right.
Okay, next stop.
Right there.
That the Gemara writes that, well, a right side.
Yeah, where I highlighted it here. That Hashem decides on Rosh Hashanah how much one will earn that year.
Okay. Hashem decides on Rosh Hashanah how much one will earn that year. Therefore, each Jewish year is considered a separate unit. Reb Zalman Auerbach writes that it's not crucial when one makes his calculation, but it should be at least once a year and should be a fixed day and not done haphazardly. The Shevet Halevi and the Tzedakah Lamishpat rules that one may use the secular calendar year, which is often more convenient since one must compute gains and losses anyway in order to pay taxes.
Exactly. Let me scroll that
The
up for you.
Shaarei Tzedek is not so happy with this ruling because it is not in accordance with Havos Yair, since Hashem's year for determining one's income is Rosh Hashanah and not the secular year. Well, of
Okay,
course, I
so
know.
let's pause there because we don't have just one year, right?
Correct.
We actually have three years going on during a cycle.
Correct.
So we have a religious year, and we have a legal year, and then we have an agricultural year, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay. So we actually have, and there's actually 3 heads of the year.
Yep.
So by him saying that determining one's income on Rosh Hashanah and not the secular year, well, that we only have one head of the year, that's not actually accurate.
It is not, because Rosh Hashanah doesn't mean new year, it means head of the year. So I don't agree with him.
We also have a year that begins right before Pesach too, don't we? This will be for you the first of the months.
So which one do we go with?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, I would think that well, again, if we go, there's an agricultural calendar too, and if they're actually going back to agriculture for the opinion, they should be going with the agricultural year. I would think.
But the secular year is out.
Yeah.
So now it's between the agriculture year and Rosh Hashanah. And it makes me think that Rosh Hashanah is out. So yes, I would go with the agriculture year.
Yeah. Well, it makes the most sense because you're talking about tithing crops.
Yes, that would make it more accurate.
Yeah. So, and the crops typically come in on Sukkot, or right around the time of Sukkot.
Everybody in the room confused?
Yeah, if they aren't, they're going to get confused.
Wait until we get into the actual calculations, which you need to be an accountant. So,
yeah.
Well, let's continue.
Okay, so we're right here.
Right.
Okay.
So it's the, and then we gotta go up.
You gotta go over to here. The Aruch HaShulchan also writes that one should make his computation based on the Jewish year. Oop. We're right here now. There is another reason that it may not always be a good idea to compute one's Maser computations with his tax computations, and that is because the rules of the tax authorities are different from the Torah's rules. Boy, that's putting it mildly. Our issue is a case in point. Whereas for tax purposes, one may carry over capital losses from one year to the next, under Torah law, one may not do so, as we have seen.
Actually, according to tax, you can carry forward 4 years.
Yeah, actually you can, yeah. Okay, which would reduce the amount that your taxable income. And well, I mean, you're only taking a percentage though.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at the end of that period, you should have taken all of your loss during that period. So it would only reduce your taxable income by the percentage of the loss that you're taking that year.
Yep.
Okay, I'm guessing at this. You know more about this than I do. Um, so if you computed it based on your taxes, again, with the deductions for this and that and the other things, but as far as capital gains and losses go, it wouldn't really make a difference because that loss would be carried over and you would only be taking a percentage of it anyway.
But computing now your taxable income, it depends what you can deduct and what you can not deduct.
Right.
And
then Donald also brings up a good point. He talks about what about depreciation? You get to claim that. I mean, you can carry that. You can carry depreciation forward how many years? Quite a few, actually, right?
Until you write off, let's say, got a car, you can take off 30% of the value of the car and every year on the remaining balance until the car is zero. So it could take 10 years depending on the cost of the car.
Well, in this case, we have a guy who owns a taxi company, which I would assume is going to be comprised of one or more taxis. And
correct.
Each one of those is going to depreciate a certain. Well, I mean, those things take a lot of wear and tear, and they get beat up a lot. So, the depreciate. It's going to depreciate like over a 5-year period. It's 5 years. It's going to be worth basically next to nothing, unless it's a checker. Unless it's a checker cam. Unfortunately, they don't make them anymore, but those things just run forever. Okay, well, let's go on.
Where are you?
Right at the very top. Where I got it highlighted. See, right
Yep.
here.
Okay. You didn't move anything, so I can't.
It's probably just lagging on your end. I'll read until it catches up. Another related issue where the two differ concerns what are considered profits. Whereas for tax purposes, an individual who has a whole or partial interest in a small corporation does not need to pay personal income tax on profits that were earned by his corporation, but were left with his corporation, depending on how your corporation is structured. When one computes his maaser, he must include these profits as personal earnings. Okay, see also the citation from Rabbi Salamon. Thus, when one takes out money from the corporation, he should add to the extra amount for maaser on the profits he is leaving in the corporation. Again, depending on how your corporation is structured. A small S corporation, there would be nothing left. A not-for-profit corporation is not going to have anything left either. What was that?
What happens if the corporation has a loss?
Okay, note that this does not include one who owns stock in a large company. Many leading poskim rule that a shareholder is not considered an owner unless he has a real say in the company, and only then is considered a partner in the company. Okay, so we are down here now. Is that actually moving now?
No.
Okay, let me fix that. Let's do a quick fix on here. This is what happens when you do a live show, folks. You know how that is from last night. I tripped all over myself last night on the show. Well, I shouldn't say I did. I mean, Zeta did. It's his fault. Okay. You getting anything now?
No. Now it's all black.
Okay, I'll carry on then. Because we're almost at the end, so I'll just go ahead and read till the end, and then we can start getting into, because I know you got a lot of information on this.
So once you finish with that, then I'll get in and how much one should give and how to calculate
Yeah.
maaser.
Okay, so another difference between Torah law and secular law concerns real estate, where, while the tax authorities allow one to avoid paying taxes if the profits are rolled over into another property, according to the above poskim, for maaser purposes, one has to include in his maaser calculation each deal that was done that year. He cannot wait until he takes out his money, if that ever happens. Once one has computed how much money he was supposed to give that year for maaser, he has to compare that with the amount of tzedakah he gave during that period. If he gave more than he was required to based on his maaser calculation, he has a credit with his maaser, which is starting to sound like taxes again.
Mm-hmm.
He has a credit with his maaser, which he can carry over to the next year. Okay, that's from the Noda ben Yehuda. If he gave less than the amount he needs to give based on his maaser calculation, he should set aside the amount he owes and distribute it to tzedakah causes. It is important to not say when setting aside the money that it is tzedakah money, but rather to set it aside and say that it will become tzedakah money when it is actually distributed. A lot of things in Jewish law are based on a declaration. So never make a declaration before it's time. Okay, so when it's actually distributed, since otherwise one might violate the prohibition of lo za'acher. In conclusion, if you didn't make a formal calculation each month and just looked at your profits in order to guide you how much to give, you may use your loss to offset your gains when you make your formal tzedakah calculations later in the year. Wow. And that is putting it simply, because it gets a lot more difficult, which Rabbi Ancel is going to go into. I'm probably going to need a pen and paper for this one, aren't I? Still with us?
Yeah, you want me to start?
Okay, it's all yours now.
Okay, so when must maaser be given, first of all? Maaser must be given immediately. That is, as soon as you earn your money, you have an obligation to tithe from it. The Chofetz Chaim says that it is praiseworthy to give smaller sums frequently. One who gives a large sum of money, a large lump sum money, yearly, will only think about tzedakah once per year. One who gives small amounts will always be thinking about tzedakah. This will mold in his character by making him into someone who is always thinking for opportunities to give tzedakah. That is common practice for religious Jews to give tzedakah. several times daily, often when attending services in a synagogue, in addition by making periodic large contributions. Now, how much should I give using the Maaser calculation to find out? It would be simple to compute Maaser if you received all your money once per year, as you could immediately make a payment of 1/10, but a modern economy is quite complex. Paychecks may come weekly, but writing only checks individually might not be practical when money must also be set aside for monthly rent payments. And what about capital gains and losses? Once yearly commissions or bonus checks? What about taxes withheld or paid? How are these figures into Maaser? How do they fit into Maaser computation? I once commented. This is a person. I once commented to an accountant who's a Torah Jew that we should be able to compute my Maaser requirement on an annual basis from my tax return. What follows is an explanation of his computation using standard US 1040 tax return. Based on this explanation, you should be able to easily make the same computation with similar forms. First, we must determine what is your income for Maaser purposes. The general rule to follow is simple. Hashem is your partner in your income. In computing your Maaser income, you can deduct the normal and acceptable expenses that any other partner would allow you to deduct. What you couldn't deduct from a flesh and blood partnership, you cannot deduct from Hashem either. Thus, you cannot deduct the cost of living, such as housing expenses or cost of owning a car. You cannot deduct the cost of food or clothes, except for clothes required for your business, such as a uniform or you're a police officer. You can deduct the expenses incurred purely for the purpose of earning your income, such as the cost of your uniform, above normal commuting costs. Other expenses of margin interest as offset by investment profits. It gives you the schedules in your income tax return. In general, reimbursement job expenses are completely deductible. Personal expenses such as cost of food while doing business or on business travel are not deductible for Maaser purposes, even if they are deductible for tax purposes. Thus, if I entertain a client at dinner and the dinner costs $100, and if this dinner and such an expense is deductible for business expense, and eating dinner at home would have cost you $5, then $95 is deductible as a Maaser expense. Wow. By the same token, dry cleaning expenses while traveling are only deductible to the degree that you incur additional expenses due to your business requirement travel. This is typically the case in a hotel where laundry, dry cleaning are very expensive compared to what you would pay at home. In general, you can use commonly accepted accounting standards for the tax or accounting jurisdiction in which you reside. Based on these rules, to compute your Maaser income, use the same accounting standards used on your tax return. This gives you a preliminary gross Maaser income before deductions on your 1040. So therefore, to your income, you must add your tax-exempt income as follows. Add in qualified distributions from line 3. This is It's going to get so confusing because we don't have a tax return in front of us. On lines 4 and 5 of the full income is included as Maser income, not just taxable portion. Add health insurance premiums, FSA expenses, and dependent car expenses that were excluded from your W-2 income as reported on line 7. While the income is not taxable, it is considered Maaser income. Tax-free income that went into retirement account designated specifically for you that has no required vesting period, such as contribution into your 401k, tax-deductible RIA account, and non-qualified deferred compensation program is not considered Maaser income in the year it is earned. Instead, it will be considered Maaser income in the year it is received. Note that not everyone agrees with this. Some held that this income is liable for Maaser in the year it is earned and it is received as free Maaser later. As a general rule, for other cases not outlined above, do not include income that will be taxable as income in the year, like 401k contributions. Include income or benefits received this year on the tax form. Add into your income additional items that may be not taxable but are liable for Maaser. This is so confusing, it's just. Capital gains on sale of private property is included as Maaser income, but adjust for inflation when computing the cost. Thus, for example, gains on the sale of a personal residence is Maaser income. To adjust the cost basis for inflation, use a cost of living index.
Okay.
A capital loss on private property.
Which is 4.21 right now, I think. Or 5.21.
A capital loss on private property can be deducted for Maaser income, but it can easily count to offset the gain on the sale of the private property. For example, if you sell a 5-year-old car at a capital loss versus the depreciation value, you can deduct this loss against capital gains on the sale of your home. So a car against the home. If you have no such capital gains, you cannot deduct this loss against W-2 income, as your car, like your home, is not purchased for investment purposes, but rather is property held for personal use. These will appear on your scale. Okay. The entire values from the above are considered Maaser if donated to an appropriate Maaser recipient. I think we should stop here. And
I was going to say, I think it's about time to take a break.
And this is there's 3 more pages on this, what you can deduct and not deduct.
Yeah. Well, when we get back, I got some numbers to throw at you, and you can tell me whether does it count or doesn't it count towards Maaser.
I think we should do a couple of examples instead of just reading what's
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've got some figures here that we can and some questions about deductions and credits and stuff like that, and then we can go in, we can figure out, okay, well, what is countable for Maaser and what isn't. So let's do that. Let me I'm going to turn your volume down here.
Okay.
And I'll take Rabbi Ancel's picture down for the moment. And we're going to take our break. I think we all need it right about now. And I know I do. And we will return in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. And if you're not totally confused by now, I don't know what to say. Let's bring bring Rabbi Ancel back in here, and make sure I got the right one. There you are.
Okay.
Okay, so
Any comments from
no, I think everybody in the chat room is basically just scratching their head, going, "What?" Okay, so let's try and simplify this. Okay, I'm going to use as a unadjusted gross income of $100,000, just because it's easier to figure the percentages that way.
Okay.
Okay, so my everything that I made that year, my investments, my salary, all of it came out to $100,000 that year. Okay, so according to the taxes, I get a credit for each one of my children. Can I take that off for Maaser, or do I have to leave it on?
No, you cannot.
Okay, so it's still $100,000. Okay.
Yes.
My interest that I pay on my mortgage, I can deduct that from my taxes.
Correct.
Can I take that? Do I have to count that as Maaser, or do I take it off?
You take it off.
That you take off. Okay. So we got dependents are a no. I'm making notes because I'm going to get lost real quick. Dependents are a no, and interest is a yes.
Yeah, you can deduct it.
I can deduct that. Okay. Okay, so if my interest is let's say $1,000. Okay, that I paid out in interest. I know that's low for most of you folks, but okay, so I'm at $99,000. Okay, so my vehicle that I have, and I use that to get back and forth to work every day. Okay, let's say 10 miles each way. 10 miles each way for, 20 miles a day for 5 days a week and 52 weeks a year. And now, taxes does not allow me to deduct that because that's just,
No.
I'm not traveling for work.
Correct.
I'm just traveling to get. However, for Maaser, can I deduct it?
Yes.
Okay, so travel. Let's just give it another $1,000.
Because Maaser they're saying is that by you traveling back and forth to work is that you are earning income. So therefore, It is deductible.
Okay. Okay. So, now in my job, I have to wear certain clothes. Let's say I have to wear a uniform. I have to wear safety shoes, safety glasses, stuff like that. So that
That is deductible both ways,
okay, that's
for taxation and for maaser.
right. Okay. So okay. Job related. Okay. Let's just give it another 1,000. I'm trying to keep these numbers simple. Okay, so we're at 97,000. Okay. So far. That we're getting to our adjusted gross income. Okay, so I made investments, let's say stock. I put money into stocks, and at the end of the year, I've got a dividend. Okay, so our dividends counted for maaser.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's just keep it simple. $1,000 in dividends. So I'm back up to 98,000. Okay. Taxes I paid on my house. Do I leave it in or do I deduct it?
You leave it in. It's your personal home. You cannot deduct. Cannot deduct it from maaser.
Okay. Okay. So, if I sell my house and let's say I bought the house for let's say $60,000. 20 years ago I bought the house for $60,000. I turned around and I sold it for $120,000. So I have made $60,000. What will you call that?
Capital gains.
Capital gains. Okay. Now that's 60,000, or is it the whole 120,000? Because let's say I'm going to take that money and I'm going to roll it into another piece of property. Okay, so I made 60,000 on it, but altogether I have 120,000, and I plunk $100,000 onto another house, and I have 20,000 left. So what is maaser and what is not? Is the whole 120,000 maaser?
Only on the gain.
Pardon? Only on the
Only
gains?
on the gain.
So it's the 60,000 we would calculate the maaser on.
Correct.
Okay, not just the 20 that I'm keeping after I put the money into another house. Well, that brings up another question. So, if I buy a house, are my house payments actually credited? Can I deduct my house payments for maaser?
You can deduct the interest paid on them. Let's say you have a mortgage payment of $500, and out of the $500 is $200 is interest. You can deduct the $200, but not the $300 principal.
Okay, so the principal has to go towards maaser.
Yes.
Okay, so if like most people, what is it? Usually the first 10 or 15 years is all interest, very little principal.
basically.
Yeah. So each year, and again, you're not going to know that number until tax time because you don't get that number until you get your 1099 interest.
Correct.
Yeah. Richard put a frowny face on. Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. Okay. So.
It's
So if I end up with okay, let's see. If I end up with I'm going to add on the 20 that I kept from my house sale. Okay. So I'm back. I'm up to $108,000 in my. Let's just call it my adjusted gross income.
okay. So let me interject in one thing.
Okay.
Now, suppose your company pays you a benefit during the year,
Like a bonus.
like a bonus. Is that considered maaser?
I would consider that as monetary. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So if I have so in reality, if I take all of these numbers, okay, let's say I take my adjusted gross income out of $100,000. My adjusted gross income on my income tax comes out to let's say it comes out to $70,000. Okay, that's my adjusted gross income. But based on what we've been talking about here, that with everything that that I can't make a deduction on from maaser, instead of $70,000, I'm up to $108,000. Okay, that's all the things that. So my maaser has to come out with $108,000 and not the 70.
Correct.
Okay, so you can't use your taxes to determine what your maaser is going to be.
Correct.
You need to be an accountant.
Yeah. What now?
Doctors, lawyers, and accountants, right?
Let me make it a little bit different. What about if you get gifts and inheritance?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I hadn't thought about that because, okay. Now, we've had several cases where they've talked about inheritance. Now, is that... Huh. Okay.
So gifts and inheritance are unquestionably maaser income, regardless or whether or not they are taxable. And this includes wedding gifts. You know?
Okay.
So it's...
Oh, you mean wedding gifts as far as money?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your bar mitzvah money counts toward your maaser, right?
Yep.
You have to count it. Okay. Yeah,
So,
I mean, this is I know everybody, and Rabbi Ancel and I were actually talking about this before we actually started to do this stuff, as how confusing it is, and if people were going to be bored with it. And my position was basically, it doesn't matter if you're bored with it or not. It's something that you need to know. I think most people have a glancing idea of what maaser and tzedakah is, but I don't think they actually realize all the things that have to go into figuring this out.
Okay, so let me put another twist in. Can you deduct household or living expenses such as food, rent? We'll discuss, or mortgage. We discussed the interest on the mortgages is deductible. Can you?
Well, I would think that Well, let me think. I would think that food and those things that you need to survive would actually come off of your income and not be counted towards your maaser.
So you cannot deduct it.
You can't deduct it.
No.
Okay, so let's take this back to what they were talking about
Wait a second.
in the thing. They were talking
Here comes
about.
the most interesting one. Here comes the most interesting one.
Okay.
Alimony.
Oh, now it has to
Deductible
count.
or not?
It
I'm
has
sorry?
to count.
Alimony is not deductible.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, so let's take this back to the agrarian society where they're actually pulling their decision from. Okay, so and going back to what you were saying about okay, I'm confusing myself. You people think you're confused? Okay, so I inherit, and we're talking about inheritance again, okay? And we're talking about not now, we're talking way back in the day when the halakha was that they're out drawing this opinion from. Okay, so in my inheritance, I get property that belonged to my let's say my father. Okay, I get so many acres of land from his property, and I got 10 cows. Okay, so let's say I got 40 acres and a mule, 40 acres of land, and I got 10 cows, and I got 10 goats. Okay. So, how do I figure out maaser on that?
But you own those. You have not sold them.
Well, they were part of my inheritance.
So that's considered maaser.
This is what I'm doing, people. I got stuff written
So
all over the
anything that
place.
you received as inheritance is maaser.
Pardon?
So anything that you received as an inheritance is considered maaser.
Right. Okay, how do I calculate that then?
Well,
I got 40 acres, 10 cows, and 10 goats.
How much is that? How much is the 10 acres worth? How much are the goats worth? And how much is this worth?
Okay, so, okay, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. Okay, so, I'm a poor schlemiel. I got next to no money. I inherit 40 acres, 10 goats, and 10 cows. Okay, so let's say that the 40 acres are worth, I don't know, 10,000. And the 10 cows are worth, well, let's say $500 a head, so that's 5,000 there. And the goats, let's say 250, that's 2,500. So I got an inheritance of 1,700 and, or I'm sorry, 10,000. No. See, I'm getting ahead of myself. $17,500.
Correct.
Okay, that's what the calculation would be. Okay, I don't have $17,500. Okay, so now at this point, I calculate my maaser portion, which at a minimum is 10, right? At 10%.
Yep.
So $1,750.
Yes.
Okay, so okay, so I haven't got $1,750. I've got 10 cows, I've got 10 goats, and I've got 40 acres. Does that mean I have to sell off some of my goats or my cows or some of my acreage to get the maaser money? So I have to sell part of my inheritance so that I can get some cash so I can set it aside for Maaser.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Oh boy, this is getting Hey, well, what about renting a car? I mean, leasing a car. If I lease a car,
If you lease a car for the purposes of earning money, then it's deductible.
okay, but what if I just lease the car because I don't want to buy it?
Then it's not deductible.
Then I have to count what I pay for the lease
Yes.
in with my gross income for Maaser. Okay. And you folks thought this was going to be boring. I already got 2 pieces of paper full of figures on here. I don't know about you, Ancel, but
So I'll give you even a better example. What
Okay.
about child support?
I'm ready.
I said, what about child support?
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't be deductible.
Alimony is not, but child support is.
Hmm.
See, the rules are so different that, like I said, you have to be a Jewish accountant that knows Torah law and knows income tax law.
So why is alimony not, but child support is?
Okay. If the person who pays the alimony cannot deduct it,
Right.
but the person who receives the alimony
Oh.
is liable for maaser.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, I can see that for alimony.
Yeah.
But what about child support?
Child support is deductible.
Well, I thought you said child support wasn't deductible.
No,
Oh.
no. Child support, no, I said it is.
Oh, okay. Alimony isn't, but child support is.
Is.
Okay. What about the person on the other end, the person that's getting the child support?
I said, it says that note that alimony received is always liable for maaser, even if the payer of the alimony has already taken maaser from his or her income before paying alimony.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I could see that, because if you were, I mean, take it into a business situation, you would, if I worked for a company that was owned by a frum Jew, and I knew he was taking his maaser off of what his profits were, and he's paying me, I can't just say, well, he's already paid his maaser, and that comes off of my. I get my salary based on what he made. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, what about a person that receives unemployment insurance, Medicare?
Oh, that
Social
wouldn't be,
Security,
well, unemployment
FICA?
insurance wouldn't be.
They're all considered maaser income.
Right. Well, look at here. We got somebody in the chat room called Lousy Writing, and he says this is really interesting. Okay, he must be an accountant or a numbers freak. At least we got some good feedback here on this. Okay, good deal. Okay. So what?
Privately held life insurances, disability insurances, health insurances.
Well, I would think on the life insurance one. Okay, now we have to make a differentiation between whether it's term life insurance or if it's whole life insurance. If it's
It doesn't say. It says
Okay.
privately health life insurance, disability insurance, health insurance, homeowners insurance, car insurance, and other insurance premiums are not deductible.
Yeah, I can see that. However, with the insurance question here, again, I'm going to say that this is going to make a difference between whether it's whole life or whether it is term. Now, if it's term, I would say no. You can't deduct it from your maaser. But if it was whole life, because at some point in the future, it's just like an investment. At some point in the future, that money is going to come back to you, and you're going to take maaser out of it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like an IRA. So an IRA,
Correct.
you're saying it doesn't count against maaser at the time that it's being taken out of your earnings. It's going to be taken out. It's going to become maaser when you get it back.
Correct.
Okay. Lousy Writing says his name is Harrison. So okay, Harrison. Okay, let's see. Okay. Here's a good one. Richard put it in the chat room. What about tax return money? You overpaid on your taxes, you got a refund.
So it's maaser.
Right, it's maaser. What if you paid in?
If you paid in the taxes,
Yeah, if you
deduct it.
Huh?
Deduct it because that's a loss.
It's a wash.
Yeah. So let's say you have a business.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. You said if you had to pay in, that's a loss. If it's a loss, then you can take it off of maaser out of your computation.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but what about? It also says like this.
Hang on. Let me get this question out. Donald put in life insurance is paid after you die. Yeah. Well, some life insurance, yeah. If you pass away, then it goes to. But whole life insurance is something else. I mean, if you should pass away during the time that you're paying into the insurance, then yes, it goes to whoever you've designated as your heir. If at a certain point in time, let's say at 70 years old, the whole life insurance stops and it starts to pay you an income after that. That's what I was saying. Okay.
Here's a question. So after everything else, you've calculated that, let's say, your taxable income is $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the year before, you had $60,000 in losses that you can carry forward. How much can you carry forward?
Tax-wise or for maaser purposes?
For both. Well,
on the maaser, it kind of depends, doesn't it? It depends on what the loss is.
So
certain losses
taxation
wouldn't count, and
purposes.
certain losses are going to count.
For taxation purposes, your losses carry forward. Let's say it's $60,000, and you only made 50. You will have a net loss of $10,000. But for maaser, you cannot. So therefore, if you have $50,000 worth of income, $60,000 from prior year, you can only apply $50,000 to nil out your income. And you can carry forward the other $10,000 to the next year. So you cannot, with maaser, you cannot create a loss. You can net the income, but you cannot create a loss. The same thing for tax purposes in a corporation. If you have, let's say, $15,000 worth of net income, but you can claim depreciation. And if you have enough to claim depreciation to claim, let's say, $15,000, you can claim up to $15,000 to nil out your income. But depreciation can never cause a loss in a corporation. That's Canadian
Yeah,
or
okay,
American
yeah.
tax.
You can only,
So for offset purposes, you can only nil out the income of 50,000 and
Right.
carry forward the 60.
but you can actually carry over the balance to the next year.
Carry the balance over the next year.
Yeah. So if I have a $60,000 loss, and I made 50,000, I can only take 50,000 on the loss, and then I carry over 10,000 for the next year.
Yep.
That right? Okay. But for Maaser, the only time I can actually carry over is if I made an error in my calculations.
Yep.
and I paid out too much. Let's say I was supposed to give $20,000, and I gave $25,000. Then I can carry over $5,000 to the next year.
Okay, so here's another question. You're the rabbi of the synagogue, and I give you support, $10,000. Or I give the synagogue, let's say the membership dues. Is membership dues considered maaser?
No,
They're not maaser.
not. Yeah.
What about the support of a Torah scholar?
It is. It's tzedakah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about financial support of a rabbi or synagogue staff?
Well, that depends. Is it a salary?
So financial support of the rabbi and other synagogue staff is considered maaser.
Okay. So this is over and above a salary that he was being paid.
Yep.
Okay. And whatever he gets, he owes maaser on it.
Okay. What about payments of a wedding expenses for a poor bride?
That would be considered tzedakah.
That is maaser.
Yeah.
What about payments for yeshiva, tuition?
For somebody else or for your own?
Well, you have a son. He's in yeshiva, and you pay the yeshiva. You pay tuition.
I would say it's not maaser.
Well, they say it is.
Is that, well, okay. Yeshiva.
What
I
about-
mean,
what about-
that's kind of like the supporting the Torah scholar, right?
What about if you go into a store and you buy yourself 50 religious books that are, you used to study? Are they considered maaser?
No, I wouldn't consider them maaser.
Yeah, but you see, they say it is. So it is.
I'd say because I'm going to benefit from them.
Yeah, it's. Yeah. It says even if the books are for personal use, the purchase still is maaser. Even if you purchase the books to teach a class, they are. It is hard for a normal, not a normal person, for a lay person to really sit down. Most people do not fill out their 1040s, especially if you have a corporation. But to sit down and look at these I can send you these 5 pages. It will flip you right out. I haven't even touched half of it. So,
Yeah,
there has to be an easier way, and I don't know. I'm going to try.
well,
and find
again, these
has to be an easier way to compute.
I mean, there's nothing in the Torah. There's nothing in the Gemara about it.
Oh, this is not
Well,
This
I'm
is
saying
Torah
it
law.
confused God.
This is not Torah law.
That's
This is
true.
rabbinic law. Doesn't mean that they're wrong, and it doesn't mean that they're right. But if you look at your income tax and what is deductible in income tax, it's totally opposite to what Maaser is considered as a deduction.
Yeah, well, that's another point, is because one of your deductions that you can take on your income taxes is your maaser.
Yep.
So you can't count it, and take it. You wouldn't be able to count it against your adjusted gross income to make a determination of what your maaser would be, because you're taking off, you're deriving a benefit from your maaser by reducing your taxes.
Yeah, but is it fair? Because even unemployment insurance payments, you've lost your job and you're getting unemployment payments from the government, basically enough to survive. But they're considered maaser, which I believe is not fair.
Yeah, because you're not making you're getting a very small percentage. Donald says, and I thought tax law is confusing. You got that right, buddy.
Well, this is
Okay, well, we're about at the end of our
let's say you
time.
own a house and you pay a real estate tax. Is that deductible?
I would
For income tax purposes?
for
It
income
is.
tax purposes, yes.
It is.
For maaser, I would say you could deduct it from your maaser.
No.
No?
Real estate taxes are not deductible because they're not part of normal household expenses. You know,
Yeah, stop paying them and see how
yeah.
how quick they're not part of household expenses.
Yeah. So it is so difficult. There's got to be, somebody has to decide, or to say, okay, I earn $10,000 a year. I'm going to give you my 1/10, and that's it. Because for you to go through this, it's just a plain headache. Because most people don't have these type of expenses unless you have a business or you have a corporation. And even at that, you still need a tax accountant. And what your tax accountant is going to tell you for your corporation is going to be totally wrong for maaser.
Right. Yeah.
So I kind of knew that this subject is going to be it is a tough subject. And computing, I said to you before we even were going to do this, it's people should be aware of it. Should they know everything about this? I can send them the information, but it's how many people pay child support, how many pay alimony. Some of these are out of their realm, but they should be aware of it, that personal home expenses are not deductible. They're considered,
Yeah, I agree with
yeah.
you. There has got to be a way to simplify this, to make it so that the average person can just sit down and say, I made X amount of money, this counts, this counts, this counts, and this is what and then calculate out your 10, your 15, your 20%, whatever it's going to be, and say, this is what my maaser is going to be. There's got to be an easy way to do it.
I need to check. You can send these questions to the Rabbanut in Israel, and you're not going to get an answer because basically they deal with Torah law. This is all complicated. I don't think it's even because. I don't think it's even rabbinic law, because I haven't seen anything like this said by Auerbach or Caro or the Shulchan Aruch doesn't discuss this. This is something that
Well, let's if we go back to Torah and I'm sorry, I got something in my eye. If we go back to Torah, I mean, typically the Maaser, what are we giving Maaser to? The Kohanim and the Levim, right?
Yep.
And we were calculating that pretty simply. You know, you know, the parts of the crops, certain animals, you know, from the herd and stuff like that. It was actually pretty simple and straightforward.
I think in the time of the temple, it was very simple.
Yeah.
These calculations didn't exist in the time of the temple. People knew exactly how much they made or how much they should pay.
Well, they knew how much they knew how much grain they brought in that year.
Yeah.
You know.
With the evolution of time, it's become so difficult. I mean, if I send the people in the room these 5 pages, they're gonna read it and they're gonna just chuck it because it's that difficult. I mean, even for me, I read it so many times, and like I said, I haven't started on it. I mean, this is 5 pages of what you can deduct or what you cannot deduct. You might as well go take an accounting course, but that's not going to help you because for accounting purposes, they say in Yiddish, ein Zach, and for Maaseh, it's another Zach. So there has to be. So I'm gonna write the Rabbanon. I said, simplify it. I said, this is not Torah law. This is not biblical law. This is partly rabbinical law, but in this whole 5 pages, not one rabbi is mentioned.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Okay, well, we're past our time. I'm going to turn your volume down. I'll be back with you as soon as we're out.
Okay.
So, interesting. You probably all have a headache now, as do I, from this. But again, you know, it's something that, you know, we think about these things, but we don't really understand, you know, what all the details are in it. And it was good to actually find out that it's a lot more complicated than we thought. So tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern is the Torah Study in Depth with yours truly, and Rabbi Ancel will be back with us again for the Torah Study. And then Friday night, Kabbalat and Aryel Shabbat service at 8 p.m. Eastern. Shachrit and Musaf on Shabbat at 10 a.m. Eastern. And then Zeta Story Corner at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then right back again here again. I think we're going to go through the stones on the Kohanim's Nechotin. As Rabbi Ancel knows quite a bit about that subject, and I think that one you'll find a heck of a lot more interesting than computing your maaser. So, with that said, we are simply going to say, we're going to turn that off first. That's what we're going to do, and we're going to simply say, Laila Tov.